afternoon we have two of the best offshore fishermen in this part of the world down here in west coast of Florida, Scott Rickert and Brian Turner. These guys have both fished here most all their lives, and we're going to sit down and talk about marlin fishing off the west coast of Florida. So guys, first of all, thanks for coming in, thanks for sitting down with us. And I guess the first thing is, what makes fishing here so special? You know, you've both been fishing here pretty much since you were teenagers. What makes this such a special place? And Scott, I guess we'll start with you.
Yeah, I just think for me personally speaking, it's my backyard. It's where I grew up, like you said, fishing, and it's a unique fishery for sure. It's a long ways out there, so it's always an adventure. And the good thing about it is it's not just strictly blue marlin that you target and have opportunities at out here. It's everything else from white marlin, sailfish, swordfish, dolphin, wahoo, and tuna. So it's a mixed bag for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Yeah, and likewise, you know, it's where I grew up. My family's been here for a long time, and we went to other parts of the world to catch billfish, and wanted to start doing it here. So anywhere where you've got that kind of topography, you know, and such a short mile range of say 8 to 10 miles, dropping off 10,000 feet, it's pretty impressive, especially when the current's running across it. So you earn it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You earn every bite.
Yep. Yeah, and I've been fortunate enough to fish out here quite a bit, and one of the things we did talk about is one of the things that makes it unique is the long run from shore. I mean, that a lot of times we're running in excess of 100 miles. I mean, where would you normally try to start fishing?
We've caught billfish, both Scott and I, sails, whites and blues, inside 100 fathoms, but the majority of the time we spend in 800 to 10,000 feet of water.
Which is roughly how far offshore?
About 120 to 130 miles.
Okay. So pretty good jaunt.
Yeah, but I think it really depends on on where the right water is too, as well. And any good fisherman will tell you, an offshore fisherman, that you got to find the right water. And where we always start off with is getting a ROF report or something along that, an analysis of the sea surface conditions out there. And we'll sometimes plan several days in advance and watch the water movements out there before we really decide where we're going.
Yeah, because I think sometimes you and I have fished in maybe as close as like 75, 80 miles, but usually not much closer than that. But as far off as you want to go, just finding the good water.
And really, the analysis are well worth it. It's a cheap part of the investment in the whole scheme of things.
Sure. Well, and that leads into the next topic, which is, it's such a big area, it doesn't get a whole lot of fishing pressure. There's, unlike a lot of other places where you've got boats that are consistently fishing this, it's so far offshore, doesn't get a lot of pressure. How do you figure out where to go? And you mentioned Ross report. I mean, you want to kind of touch on that for a minute, but watching the water, watching the satellite feeds, how do you figure out where to start fishing?
Days in advance, usually, if particularly for a billfish tournament, we'll watch the water on these different sites, whether it's Mitch Roffer's deal he's got going, or Hilton's, or Terrafin, wherever. And what we'll end up doing is buying 2 or 3 several days in advance and watch the movements and see where it's moving. Also keep a satellite phone on board, and we'll usually call one of those services as well and get updates while we are offshore to keep us going in the right direction.
Sure. And Brian, you had mentioned altimetry and the part that plays in kind of in your game plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the clarity and the micronutrients in the water, especially if we're catching swordfish at night, we know that we're in a good area, and we're seeing other pelagics, dolphin, tunas, wahoos. That's generally always a good sign.
Sure.
For anybody.
Finding the sign of life there.
But that loop water is critical for us.
And you bring up the loop. Explain real fast what the loop current is in this part of the Gulf of Mexico. We are on the west coast of Florida, so we're geographically kind of in the center of the west coast of Florida. So if you would just kind of touch on that for a second.
Well, it's a warm water current that comes up between Cuba and the Yucatan, makes a circle in the Gulf, goes back down around the Keys and ties in with the Gulf Stream. So it's our version of the Gulf Stream.
Sure. And when that current sweeps up over the areas of structure, that's really what you're looking for?
Yeah, definitely. When it's onshore, coming across those fathom breaks, it makes the water boil.
Sure. When you go to start fishing, and let's say whether it's a tournament or a fun fish day, Scott, what's your kind of your go-to spread for blue marlin, white marlin, sailfish, kind of your mixed bag spread?
Right. Yeah, it's changed over the years dramatically. We strictly years ago, back in the late 70s and 80s and through the 1980s and 90s, we were strictly plastic fish. We'd pull lures. That was basically it, and we'd take a handful of natural baits with us. And today, I've pretty much switched over to all natural baits for the most part. Pulling dredges, daisy chains with chuggers with natural baits on them and things of that nature. So that's kind of circle hooks, light leader, light drag, light line, smaller rods and reels today than what we used to use years ago. Yeah.
So you're normally fishing 30-pound test line, like 80-pound leaders, stuff like that.
20 to
20 to 30
or 25 to 30. In a tournament, we try to keep it for IGFA reasons at 25, but we're 80, 60-pound leader sometimes. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, with circle hooks.
And Brian, what about you?
We'll generally run a little bit heavier, just because we've gotten in some trouble with some bigger fish out here. But we'll usually run about 50-pound with 200-pound leader, generally. If it's slow, we're more geared towards the artificial, just trying to cover some ground and dial in, the fish. And then once we raise a fish or release a fish, generally we'll go to naturals, slow it down, work the area a little tighter.
Sure. What lure colors do you like to go to if you had your go-to spread?
Definitely black and purple, St. Thomas Prowler, and all St. Thomas Prowlers really is the only artificial that I run. So black and purple, and the bonita colored, which is light blue and a little bit darker blue and white.
Single hooks or double?
Some single, some double.
Depends on size of the lure.
Yeah.
Okay. Your general thoughts on fishing the west coast of Florida? I mean, it's a neat area. It's something a lot of people don't get a chance to do, but kind of take us home there.
Yeah, I mean, I would challenge anybody to come down and give it a shot. It's so far, and it's basically untouched. I mean, there's a few of us, a handful of us in the area, and a few people outside the area that down to Naples that do it. But yellowfin tunas, blackfin tunas, white marlin, blue marlin,
wahoos,
sailfish, big wahoos.
It's all out there. Yeah.
Big wahoos. And definitely into July through October is phenomenal.
Sure.
I'd say it's kind of like a hidden gem out there. If you have the time, the ability, and the money to get out there, it's well worth it. Generally speaking, if you plan properly, you're going to find fish. It's a mixed bag a lot of times,
sure,
like I said earlier, but it's really a lot of fun. It's an adventure. You never know what you're going to find out there. Anything from swordfish at nighttime to blue marlins, white sails, dolphins, wahoos, and tunas, and we've even caught big eye tuna out here. So you just never know what you're going to run across.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exciting.